Yesterday, CNN released a story alleging that Morgan Freeman had been the perpetrator of various sexual comments and actions toward multiple women. I think it was about eight. And so, shortly thereafter, he released a statement, and this was followed by ET digging up footage from 3 years ago where he made allegedly suggestive comments toward women. Now I've watched the footage. Let me say hello to Envoy. Let me say hello to Dirk. Dirk is typing 3 messages per second. I'm impressed by his speed. I watched the footage, and I'm going to tell you as I watched it, I kind of had this thing where, and you'll see it, what I mean if you go and check it out. Basically, it's these two compilation clips of women being the interviewers of Freeman for these various films. Let me say hello to O'Donohue. Everybody jumped in here. Wow. And what you're going to notice is that in both instances where he's talking to the women, they have a shared characteristic of going, not, oh my God, he's talking to me like that. So I don't want to hear anything about how uncomfortable I was, how freaked out I was, how disturbed I was. Both of them on that footage showed their liking of talking to him. Envoy says he hasn't seen the compilation. It's on ET. If you type in Morgan Freeman ET, there should be a minute-long clip with a retarded ad in front of it, nonetheless. But you'll check it out, or you'll see it if you go on there. And it sucks because I really wanted to talk about that shooting in Indiana, but we might not be able to. This is they're both part of patterns that we just keep seeing over and over. O'Donohue says, "Can someone just be a celebrity without this crap happening to them?" You know, one of the things people have to recognize about being public figures is that thanks to the age we live in, where there's no filter to what is released online or what's put out there in media, people are allowed to effectively launch smear campaigns, to discredit or claim that you're some awful person. We say hello to ALU. And as a direct result of that, you're allowed to have people come forward 5, 10 years later after the supposed incident took place, and make claims of you. Envoy asks, what's the website again? ET Entertainment, whatever that thing is called. Just type in Morgan Freeman and it should be in there. You'll see it. Dirk says people just want to take advantage of others' attention. It seems so. I'm very shocked to see CP in here. I thought she'd be playing the little video games. Those having some fun with the consoles and whatnot, or the computers. Okay, so Old School says, I keep repeating myself. These shootings are a moral and a psychological issue at its true core. I agree. AOU says it's not true. I don't know if he's referring to the new scandal with Freeman or just all of these allegations in general. And what really grossed me out, because often when there's some big news story that breaks, I like to go and watch other people's reactions to it. And more often than not, because I typically watch TYT and these other little groups, they, admittedly lean toward the left. And I have to say the worst thing about watching their, take on this circumstance was the fact that they bring up these other cases, like the allegations that were made against the older Bush. And it follows a pattern where you have people saying, why would all of these women lie about this? Why would they make that up? As if you don't, no one can be compensated for, testimony or word of mouth. There's no financial incentive to go and slander a person or organization with hopes of acquiring some gain. Okay, ALU says, I told you this was going to happen. There was going to be another shooting this month. Yeah, you did. And again, I didn't object to that because we're used to this happening. O'Donohue says, yeah, you make a sexual allegation against a public figure and you get some fame in the news. Yeah, they have been able to very successfully craft this new policy where they'll pick out a celebrity and get a couple of women together and they'll say that someone did something to them. Say hello to Brian. And I was referring to ALU. Okay, so now I know what you were talking about. I didn't want there to be any misconceptions. Okay, Envoy says that he shook his head when he saw it. He just couldn't believe it. That was the most let down he had been since being divorced the first time around. After his ex-wife took his various assets. Okay, let me see what else. Trying to make sure I responded to most of the because most of the people in here are typically part of the new policy I mentioned in the other stream where only a select list of users will get referred back to. Envoy says, I feel like my hope is just lost in the world. Well, look, if we just had a society where people could go and make claims of things, I could tolerate it. But what we're starting to see now is a pattern of people making a claim and then having others just buy into whatever their narrative is. And they try to guilt trip you into believing it if you say you don't. So, for example, without even hearing my rationale for why I don't believe it, you'll have people who will come into the comments section and say, "Oh, because you're a male, you don't understand the workplace struggles of contemporary women." And my argument will be that while it's something that does happen, if you watch the various clips that ET is pointing to as evidence of the Freeman's questionable behavior, both the women that he supposedly was harassing in these clips laughed at it. They giggled. They went. So I don't buy it. Let me see. Oh, he. Okay, so Tavin says, I bet you find some sexual harassment claims on Denzel Washington next. I thought you were saying, I bet you find some sexual harassment claims on George Washington. Because if you guys remember the Jew Wario thing with that YouTuber, I mean, the man was dead for years, and was kind of this immortalized figure for gaming people or people that like that type of media. And then all of a sudden, when Channel Awesome is getting dragged under the website he was part of, they start talking about this hidden figure that used to molest people. People, Envoy says, people start bringing up harassment against George Washington, Abraham Lincoln very soon. Well, again, speaking of presidents, I'm supposed to believe, thanks to the feminist wave, that 3 of the last 5 presidents, other than the one of the dumbest men to ever trot this earth and the black guy, were molesters. I'm supposed to believe that the older Bush, just like how O'Donoghue brought up the Stan Lee one, this 90 plus year old man who was in a wheelchair was so sexually powerful as to be able to grab behinds of women, or decided that I'm going to spend my last 1,000 days touching on people. Was in public life for many decades, didn't have any of these claims made at all, and then all of a sudden now we're going to come forward. So all of it is very malarkey filled, and it's sad because you know it makes the cases where there's actual evidence or there's something that is more than just word of mouth, not not taken as seriously. Like for example with the Weinstein stuff, I believe those claims because a lot of the women that are coming forward actually have some standing to where that they're not there to make a gain or some profit. And then also one of the women, this Japanese actress, or she was, I think, Asian or something, had a videotape where she caught Weinstein saying, just do this for me, just do that. So just read the ET thing. Now that day has come and saying hello. Brian says, how can an 80-year-old overpower a 20-year-old? Yeah, I don't understand either. Some of these guys are in positions of power, so that's a lot of women's excuses. Yeah, but what a lot of them will tell you is that it's because of their position and the fact that they put them in some secret room where there's no one around. They're able to do it there. But you have to question yourself, wait a second, if the guy is physically unable to get around and chase me because of how old he is, aren't I able to get away? Yeah. And again, what gets me is just this thing of, oh, when did this happen? During the 1980s. Oh, why are you coming forward now? The other 20 people over there are coming forward as well. I don't like that bandwagon type feeling that I keep getting off of these. Okay, VVS says Weinstein turned himself into the. I think he'll be let off easy. I was wondering why that trial hadn't taken place and the Cosby one was all rushed and talked about over and over. Envoy says it seems like a lot of women like to be victims against celeb men. That's disgusting. Dirk says Weinstein deserves more because he did a lot of damage. Yeah, I can actually believe that one. And they get upset with you when you say you're going to be selective of what you believe and don't believe. But I'm not going to allow myself, because here's the central thought a lot of males backing this don't want to recognize. It's only okay to go, oh yeah, I believe, yep, and play the Weeble or whatever until it gets turned on you. So again, it's guilty until it's currently guilty until proven innocent, whereas it should be innocent until proven guilty. But again, we live in a backwards society when it comes to many things. So that's how it is. Make sure I've responded to the other individuals here. Envoy says the word sexual harassment makes it sound so disgusting, like a man is some uncontrolled fiend. I mean, I feel like one of these days we're going to get some kind of cartoon version of this, and all the guys that get accused they're going to be historical figures at that point. They're all going to have these really long fingernails and fangs and bloodshot red eyes. Molesters, the predators. You were saying indeed to something that somebody wrote, or something I said maybe. Envoy says, isn't it funny how none of the women mention their names? Why is that? Yeah, again, and remember what needs to be understood. They will get upset with you for saying, how could you not believe women when they've been subject to second-class citizenship in society, yada, yada, yada. But I guarantee you that if any of these charges are made toward you, you're going to have a change of heart where you're going to say, wait a second, people are believing this stuff about me just because they have enough, people saying something. It'd be different if someone has evidence such as a tape of me admitting it or me saying it in a document or in a text message or my DNA in them. If they didn't wait 1,000 days to come forward. Okay, O'Donoghue says, I can't imagine being a famous celebrity who everyone knows the name of and is falsely accused of sexual harassment. My name would falsely be tainted and no one would know I'm innocent. Again, go watch that TYT video. It is absolutely disgusting. And I genuinely or generally like the stuff they espouse during other topics, but it is absolutely disgusting that in a flip of a switch, you go from going, oh, this is such a great Hollywood icon to, oh my God, I can't stand him. I never want to see anything he's in ever again. That is literally that video in a nutshell. They're always from go back. Okay, well, I already told you we got our footage from a couple of years ago, and that did not look uncomfortable to me. They were, in fact, one of them got up after supposedly being verbally harassed and shook his hand. And again, he's sitting in his chair. He's not, using the force to make her come toward her or toward him or, whispering something in her ear about her brother's legs being found by the dock next week if she doesn't do this. So she did that willingly. Okay, O'Donoghue says he hates TYT. I hate the rush to have guilty until proven innocent. That's something I abhor. Okay, now next something on when we was then Tom Hanks looking at someone is next. It seems like we're just getting it every couple of days, not days but weeks. It would make for a really interesting story. Just imagine every 7 or 8 days you're sitting there, going to work and doing all of your other daily activities, and you turn on the news and this famous actor you've known for your entire life is supposedly a molester. We don't have any actual evidence of anything other than word of mouth. So the CP says throughout history, women have lied about guys touching them So I am always low-key skeptic about some of these women's claims. Yeah, it's fishy. Again, they try to make it to where if you don't, it's a you're damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Because if you go out and say I believe this, um, you're effectively saying that it just takes someone saying something for you to buy into it, no actual proof of anything. And if you're a male, people are going to call you a hypocrite when if someone accuses you later on. And if you say you don't believe it, you're going to be called, part of the patriarchy and, trying to suppress expression and yada yada yada. And also, even if he said something that was gross, I mean, I'll take that any day over actually putting his hands on someone, which is also being alleged here. But, again, word of mouth. And this is what gets me. We live in the era of smartphones and all these cameras and being able to record just about anything. And yet no one has him on footage doing this. I'm not talking about saying something, but, actually, or if he is saying something, admitting that he did something. No one has that. And it's the same thing with all of these different males. And it's gotten to a point where now I have to defend people I don't even really, like that much. If we go back to December, there was a Senate candidate, Moore. That was the guy that was accused of touching all these little girls. And, I thought his politics were atrocious. But the one thing he mentioned that I couldn't refute him on was that, I've run for, I think he said 5 statewide, as in just the whole state campaigns. And now all of a sudden, after all of those, you come forward claiming I did something to you before any of them began. I couldn't refute it. They had me sitting at the table with a guy that, I wouldn't even spit in the direction of. Okay, Dirk says, nah, Moore seems like a... Look, I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. What I'm telling you is that he made a point I could not argue against. And sure enough, after that election was over, have you heard anything of charge? He's actually suing them for defamation. So things have been flipped around. Envoy says, none of these women say their names, all from the shadows. I understand the shame if it indeed happened, but why wouldn't you want to come out and let it be known? Again, it's silent destruction. They're just seeking to go out and destroy someone's reputation and be able to walk around with no consequences for it. Envoy says there's no voice recorder. Apparently those cost $1 million when they're when I suggest they're used that way. Oh, I'm trying to get back to that Stan Lee one. That was a really good example I'm talking about here. Now that day has come, says you're not a Hollywood actor until you've had a sexual assault case against you. You're not a Hollywood actor until you have someone alleging you of doing something with no proof and having some level of people believe it just because someone came out and made the claim. They could never be out trying to get a cash grab. Man of Leisure says, love Morgan as an actor, but his thought process are questionable to say the least. I don't know what that means. That's probably, if any of you saw the last stream with the black screen, that's another one of those. I've never seen you before. Jump in here, say something that catches me off guard, and then run out. Brian says, I'm never one to joke on rape or sexual assault, but come on, these women aren't even attractive. Hey, well, my whole thing has been that, again, most guys, even in positions of power, don't get as much sex as they want. Why do you think you had Schwarzenegger getting romantically involved with his nanny, who, every male, just about, and I'm not trying to diss her, but every male I knew who saw her thought I gave them the wrong photo, and telling them about recounting that story. Envoy says SJW, PC culture, feminism, Me Too movement, sexual relationships. How does this benefit men in any way? Again, people will get shocked when you don't want to associate yourself with loads of individuals or go to these major gatherings, but you see what happens. Notice how all of these actors probably had a very active social life where they were allowed to be around loads of people to where someone can legitimately say, yeah, I might have bumped into this person at this party, 20 years ago, and oh yeah, he grabbed and fondled me and touched me and all this nonsense, and they can have at least the benefit of the doubt in being able to list some party that they might be able to prove you went to, whether or not you did it. So, the secret to destroying someone's life is you only need a little bit of truth to get away with it. Tavin says, "Yeah, Brian, I agree. These women that claim to be raped are never the best looking." Uh, and yeah, Envoy says Brian was shooting from the hip. I'm glad he's not shooting from a pistol like in Indiana earlier. Brian says, like, seriously, it's not like these victims look like. Hey, you're gonna get your account targeted for all of these spiteful messages toward the opposite sex. You can't. That's not authorized here. Freedom of speech is at least when it comes to them is not something we endorse in this quarter. People can come on my stuff and say I'm very unattractive and ugly every day, but if you say anything about victimized women, you can't do that. That's not allowed here. Oh, now that day has come says ugly chicks need attention. Dirk says freedom of speech is one-sided. No, well, yeah, but freedom of speech, in my opinion, in the current era is only allowed if it agrees with whatever the person is already thinking. AOU says, I believe these accusers come out later on because they can't get acting gigs because they're unattractive. I guess so, yeah. Envoy says allegations are not the way to go about it. Now the day has come is giggling in the corner somewhere. Old school music says, why despise this radical feminism? All of a sudden it's sexual assault. If you say they are beautiful or attempt to go in for a kiss. Yeah, people react really bizarrely to certain compliments. It's kind of strange because I've actually had several individuals, I kid you not, who have become upset with saying something about a physically look, even if it was something positive. Oh, you look really nice, with whatever. That's a violation. Tavin says, Brian speaking the truth, never been one to make fun of victims, but just look at the Cosby accusers. She looked undead or something. Hey, I can already predict the toxic masculinity claim that people are going to say of the stream in the comment section. They're going to say all those sexist men. Can I ask this question to JD in the chat? If a guy's in a position of power, ask an actress to sleep with him, and she does for a role in the movie, who's in the ring? The guy who asked, who asked, or the girl? Well, here's the thing. If my problem with that is, even if I want to say it's wrong to try to come up to someone that you're involved with professionally, if they as an adult choose to partake in it, again, you didn't force yourself on them, you didn't shove them in a little locker or anything, then I don't know how I can just say, oh, poor victim, oh, she knows what she was doing, she's just a little girl. So my sympathy runs thin even in those circumstances. And again, if you didn't want to be in this movie or didn't want to sleep with this person to be in this film, go get a regular job like everybody else. If the shoe was on the other foot, it wouldn't be considered sexual harassment. I would bet my bottom dollar. Why do you think you haven't seen any women getting accused of, having 50 guys come forward? Oh, she touched me. When? Oh, in 1968 or 69 or some other year. In the opening days of the Nixon administration, she just grabbed all over me. You don't see that. And you won't see it. Got accused recently, but she got off. I would love to see that. VVS, send me a link to that story. If a guy leans in and the girl shrugs him off and he stops there, that is not sexual harassment. It's a bad date. If he forced himself to get a kiss, that's bad. I agree. Let's see what else. Keep trying to make sure I'm attentive to these, the influx of comments here. See what the hell. I think it was, or someone like that comedy thing. How about when she goes in to hug you and you sneak in for a kiss? Yeah. No, there's all kind of just double standards that get thrown out there over and over again. I mean, you get to a point where just disengaging from people will get you criticized as some introvert, but you keep explaining, I'm not adverse to talking to loads of people, but if they're going to increase the chances of someone, slandering my name, what's the point? Uh, what's hilarious, I see some women talk shows who literally salivate over men. They'll have topless pics of The Rock, Idris Elba, Michael Jordan, and say how they would love to make them their toys and whatnot. Make them their boy toys. Yeah, I've heard that as well. You just had this dumb phone call. Okay. Envoy says, what if there's a guy talk show and they undress women in Hollywood? Uh, oh, that would get that would be off the air in 2 episodes. Tavin says, I find it hard to believe a senile old man overpower a bus. Yeah. Well, you find it hard to believe because it's not conducive to reality. Again, even if they're in some separate corridor, he can't get up and just exert the power from when he fought in World War II. Uh, Dirk says, what happened to the guy in House of Cards? Spacey coming out after him. Good point. There's a lot of people that are able to get away with, you know, charges and or just keep doing work. You look at Roman Polanski, look at R. Kelly, all these different fixtures in pop culture that people have known about for decades and just never seriously done anything about. The Polanski thing happened 40 years ago, and I still have people to this day who will say, "Well, to be fair, he wasn't actually convicted." I'll never get over that the guy who tried to not condemn Polanski because he hadn't been convicted, but was the first one to jump on the bandwagon about the Cosby stuff. And that was before the conviction. That was before anything that cemented that he was supposedly guilty of all of these crimes against everyone that had a uterus within 50 feet of him. So it's again, it's the hypocrisy is all over the place. I can almost guarantee you that most of the women who go and believe these claims, and say, "Oh, why are they?" It has to be true because there's so many of them. If you ask them, if it were their son or husband or some male that was known to them in that same circumstance, if they'd believe it, most of them would say no, because they have a selective viewpoint when it comes to what they'll accept about a person that is, that they actually care about, and someone that is being slandered that they don't, know for, anything about, other than people are coming forward with no evidence, other than word of mouth. That is, that's the new evidence. Getting more and more. Yeah, there's loads of people in here. As my hand is over here dying and getting all messed up. So it was my intention to speak on the on that shooting, but this story I wanted to do yesterday, but kind of got sidetracked. As soon as the allegations came, he'd been losing money to SMH. Yeah, and understand, the more people believe in each new one, it becomes like, ask yourself this: when the Weinstein ones came forward or came out a couple of months back, you said to yourself, well, you know what, I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt. Okay, this might be true, maybe not, whatever. And didn't, as each new one came out month after month after month, you say to yourself, wait a second, every other actor in every other movie is a molester slash, politicians, whatever. Just all these guys are just these rabid, depraved, sexual deviants and degenerates. Didn't it become more ridiculous as new charges emerged month after month after month? Yeah, boy, that'll end up probably being a black screen stream, a BS. Uh, Actually, I haven't read the details, so I only know of the injuries at this point. Okay. All right. So I think people are starting to kind of lose their steam when it comes to this story. But the only thing I would really say is that he'll probably end up, because if you notice, most of these haven't gone to trial. Like the Bush ones, they didn't take him to court. Um, when it came to the stuff with Stan Lee, they didn't take that to court. There's a whole bunch of them that I can't list just off the top of my head. That, but still, we know if we look it up, it didn't really go anywhere further. Okay, Dirk says Hollywood isn't safe and has muddy waters as well. Yeah, that water is very brown. Envoy says it needs to go out. And I already know what the next stream is going to be about. Okay, Envoy says I need to go out and get some McDonald's. So he'll be back after he gets a Big Mac. And yeah, I think everyone's pretty much tucked out. That's the worst part of the stream because I'll sit there and get all okay. Envoy says no McDonald's. He's rather referring to what's the other one? KFC. So after he eats some of that Kentucky Fried Chicken, he'll come back or return. Any form of meat he'll get his hands on. Okay, VVS is saying some without the O and the E and with the adding of a U. That's his own spelling. That's his swagger style of typing. ALU is giggling to himself in the corner just like Dirk did earlier. Who was that did that earlier? Let me go look. Where it was someone that typed, and then I was trying to figure out what they were laughing about. There was a shooting. Yeah, that was yesterday, Dirk. The Oklahoma shooting at that restaurant. Really, it just feels like all the news stories are shootings, harassment, something Trump does, and then, uh, maybe a thing about health, if anyone's noticed. Doesn't it feel like that's all the news is now? Shootings, sexual harassment, something political, and somebody dies, maybe. I'm getting close to it. People are falling asleep. I have 10 people here. Everybody just went to bed. Dirk says the news doesn't even show everything. There's a lot of details you have to just look up online. Old School says I already studied that our country has the highest gun fatality because we have the most guns in the world. Yeah, but people, not to get too off topic here because I will try to sum this up and close it out with that. Also, I'm getting kind of annoyed. I keep getting these phone calls, which is really obnoxious. You call me once and then I don't answer, and then 2 minutes later call again. I know who that is anyway. People don't want to recognize the fact that when you have more of something that is potentially damaging, you increase the likelihood of having potential damages. So, for example, when you have these politicians who will say, "Oh, it's mental illness that is causing this," having the mental illness by itself would not allow you to go out and kill so many people, with that weapon if you didn't have it. So they don't want to recognize whatever. That view is not allowed anymore. We don't tolerate that. So all in all, another Hollywood giant has been, supposedly defamed by these claims, and we're going to probably see someone else get alleged. I'm glad that people did speculate on who it was, because I can guarantee you, I wouldn't be surprised if it's because they said the person's name in here that 6 or 7 days later we start hearing about another person who coincidentally was name dropped here. Hashtag who's next? VVS writes. Yeah, so it's a sad state of affairs. We live in guilty until proven innocent. Believe every single thing that is said of someone. Don't question anything or think critically about things. Just react off of emotion and every other issue that doesn't even have to do with the case. So I mean, think about this. If you say he's innocent because there's no proof, they'll say, "Oh, you're supporting the patriarch," and you sit and you'll say to yourself, "Wait a second. it's not the fact that you're telling me I don't believe he's not guilty because there's a lack of evidence. You're telling me that I don't believe he's not guilty because of things that happened in the past. So he's not guilty because of McCarthyism and World War I and World War II and every other event that preluded it that had some, I guess, debatable, demeaning role for women. This man's entire life can be defamed on the backbone of things that happened before. Okay. Old school music says when I go to class, I always look for the emergency exits and make sure the proximity is within distance of escape. That way, if there's okay, you're yeah. Well, say that for the other stream if I do that. So I thank everyone who participated in this. I might pick this up right after this with a. I'm going to be redundant there with another stream on the shootings, uh, and speak about that for a couple of minutes or for some amount of time. So thank you.